Here's a lesson for section 4.5, Modeling with Algebra. In this lesson, what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to solve word problems by turning the words into algebraic equations and then solving the equations for the unknown variable. So before we do that, let's make sure we can transform words into algebraic expressions and equations. So we'll start off with some algebraic expressions. So I have the expression the sum of 5 and y. I know the word sum means addition. So I have the sum of 5 and y, that means 5 plus y. So here's the algebraic expression that represents this phrase here. Number 2, the product of 4 and x. I know product means multiplication, so I need to multiply 4 and x together. So I can just write that as 4x. I don't have to put an operator between them, because I know if I don't see an operator between a number and a variable, I know I'm assuming that they're being multiplied together. So 4x means 4 times x. Number 3, the product of 4 and m. So product, once again, means multiply. So I need to multiply the 4 and the m together, so 4m. I then need to increase this result by 7. So I need to add 7 to this product. And there we go. Number 4, the sum of 4 and d, then multiply the result by 2. So I know sum means addition, and then it tells me to multiply the result by 2. So I need to add 4 and d. So 4 plus d. I need to add those together. I then need to multiply this entire result by 2. That's why I put the brackets there, so that I multiply this entire thing by 2. Putting the brackets here ensures that I add the 4 and the d first, okay? Because BEDMAS tells me I would simplify inside the brackets first. And then putting outside the brackets that 2 means I would then multiply this entire result by 2. Number 5, add 4 to d, then double the result. So this one's similar to the last one. So add 4 to d. So I'm going to have d plus 4. Then I need to double the result of whatever d plus 4. So I need to double the result of this. So I need to put this in brackets to make sure I do that before I do any multiplication. So I would do d plus 4 and then put the 2 outside of the brackets, make sure I double that result. 3 consecutive numbers. So how would I write 3 consecutive numbers? Well, my first number, I don't know what the number is. I could use a variable for that, x. My first number is x. What would be the number after x? Well, it would be x plus 1. What would be the number after that? We'll add another one to that, and it becomes x plus 2. So those are 3 consecutive numbers. X, x plus 1, and x plus 2. Those are 3 consecutive numbers. Okay. Example 2. Let's write an equation for each sentence. So we're writing equations now. A number increased by 6 is 20. So I don't know what the number is. I don't know. I'll use a variable for that, x. But if I increase that number by 6, it will equal 20. When you see this word is, that means equals. So a number, I don't know what it is, so I'll use x, increased by 6, so add 6, is equals 20. So I've written an equation based on this sentence here. Number 2, a number multiplied by 4 is 16. Make sure you see this word is and think of that as an equals. So a number multiplied by 4, I don't know what the number is, so once again I'll use a variable, I'll just use x. A number multiplied by 4. So 4 times a number, 4 times x, is 16. Number 3, 7 less than a number is 15. So once again, here's my equals, the is. 7 less than a number, I don't know what the number is, but I know 7 less than it, so the number minus 7 is equal to 15. Number 4, 1/5 of a number is 6. So I can do this a couple ways. I could write this as 1/5 of a number. I don't know the number, so I use x. So 1/5 times the number is 6. I could write it like that. Or I know a fifth. To find a fifth of a number, I'm just dividing it by 5. So you could write it as the number divided by 5 is equal to 6. Either way is acceptable. Multiplying a number by a fifth or dividing a number by 5 is the same thing. A number divided by 6 is 7. So I have a number. If I divide that number by 6, it tells me that result is 7. 2 more than triple a number is 14. So 2 more than triple a number. So I have triple a number, 3 times x. 2 more than that, add 2, is equals 14. So I've made an equation for that expression as well. Now let's try a couple word problems. So when you're doing a word problem, it's very important to make sure you define the unknowns in the word problem. Then write an equation to model the situation, then solve the equation, and make sure you answer the question that's asked in the problem. That's the most important part. Make sure after you've solved everything that you've actually answered the question it asked you. So, I operate a variety store with my 2 best friends, Sydney and Evgeny. Sydney makes twice as much as Evgeny. I make $200 a week more than Sydney. The total weekly payroll is $14.50. So what I need to do here, first off, is I'm going to define my variables. So it gives me a bunch of information. Let's look at Evgeny first. It tells me that Sydney makes twice as much as Evgeny, and I make $200 a week more than Sydney. So it doesn't really compare Evgeny to anyone. What does Evgeny make? Let's just start off the expression X. Evgeny makes X amount of dollars. Now let's look at Sydney. Sydney makes twice as much as Evgeny. So he makes twice as much as Evgeny does, so he makes 2x. And then it says, I make $200 a week more than Sydney. So I make what Sydney makes plus 200. So 2x plus 200. And it tells me that the total payroll for the store is $1,450. So the total is $1,450. So, part A, I need to write an equation that relates these expressions to the total payroll. So I know total payroll is $1,450. And I know that is equal to the sum of these three amounts that are being paid. So x plus 2x plus 2x plus 200. So 1450 equals what Evgeny makes plus what Sydney makes plus what I make. 2x plus 200. Okay, so the total payroll equals the sum of those three things. So let's solve the equation for, we actually used x. Okay, now it's part B says solve the equation for x. So let's do that by collecting our like terms and simplifying. So on the right side of the equation, I have an x plus a 2x plus a 2x plus 200. I know adding a polynomial, I can just drop the brackets. So plus 2x plus 200. I'm going to now collect my like terms on the right side of the equation, x plus 2x plus 2x. So I have a 1x plus 2x is 3x, add another 2x, I now have 5x plus 200. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to solve this equation. I know when I'm solving an equation, I need to first isolate the term that has the unknown variable. So I'm going to isolate this 5x by moving the 200 to the other side. On the right side, I'm adding 200. When I move it to the right, it becomes subtracting 200. 5x. Now I'm going to simplify. 1450 minus 200 is 1250 is equal to 5x. Now I have 5 times x. The opposite of multiplying x by 5 is dividing it by 5. So to move that 5 to the other side, I must divide by 5. So I have 1250 divided by 5 is equal to x. And then if I divide x by 5, I get, or sorry, if I divide 1250 by 5, I figure out that x is equal to 250. So I know x equals 250. Now that I know x equals 250, how much does each friend make? Well, I know Evgeny, he makes X amount of dollars, and I know X is 250, so he makes 250 bucks. Sydney, he makes 2 times what Evgeny makes, so 2 times X, which is 2 times 250, which is 500 bucks. And what do I make? I make 200 bucks more than Sydney, so I make 2x plus 200. So I make 2 times 500, or sorry, times 250. I make 2 times 250, which is 500, plus 200. So 2 times 250 is 500 plus 200 is $700. So these are our weekly earnings. I earn $700 a week. Sydney makes $500 a week. Evgeny makes $250 a week. Okay, let's do another question. So the length of a rectangle is 7 meters more than its width. The perimeter is 60 meters. What are the dimensions? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to define my variables. So it's asking me for the dimensions of a rectangle. I know a rectangle has a length and a width. I'm just going to make a quick diagram of a rectangle here. I've got a length and a width. So my variables, L represents my length, W represents the width of the rectangle. And let's look at what the question tells me. Okay, so it says the length of the rectangle is 7 meters more than its width. The perimeter of the rectangle is 60 meters. So I know I'm working with the perimeter here. It tells me perimeter is 60. Let's remember, what's the formula for the perimeter of a rectangle? Well, it's the sum of the sides on the outside of an object is perimeter. So I need to add up the sides here. I have a length here, a length there, so I have two lengths. And I have a width here, two widths. So the perimeter is equal to 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. Okay, that's good. It tells me the length of the rectangle is 7 meters more than the width. So it tells me length is equal to the width plus 7. So what I can do, I can take that width plus 7, and substitute that in for the length into my equation there. So let's go ahead and do that. So I have perimeter equals 2 times the length, and I know the length is width plus 7. And what else do I know? It tells me that the perimeter is 60. So I can plug in 60 for the perimeter. Let's do that. And now I have an equation that has only one unknown. So I can solve that equation. So let's go ahead and do that. So I have 60 equals, I'll distribute this 2 to the W and the 7. I get 2W plus 14 plus 2W. So I get 60 equals 2W plus 2W is 4W. Now I need to isolate the term that has the W, so move this 14 to the other side. So I have 60 minus 14 equals 4W. If I take away 14 from 60, I get 46 equals 4W. Now, the opposite of multiplying W by 4 is dividing by 4. So to move this 4 to the other side, I must divide by 4. So I get 46 over 4 equals W. 46 divided by 4 is 11.5. So the width is 11.5 meters. I'm in meters. So good, I've just solved for the width. I know the width is 11.5 meters. But let's not forget the question asks us to figure out both dimensions, the length and the width. I know width is 11.5. I can determine the length based on this property here. It tells me that the length is equal to the width plus 7. The length is 7 more than the width. So all I have to do is add 7 to this to figure out what the length of the rectangle is. So I'll go ahead and do that. So on this side over here, I determined that the width is 11.5. So I figured out width equals 11.5 meters, and I know length equals width plus 7. That's what it tells me here. Length is width plus 7. So I know length is equal to 11.5 plus 7, so the length is 18.5 meters. So I have my dimensions. My width is 11.5 meters. My length is 18.5 meters. So those are my dimensions of my rectangle. Good, so I've answered my question. I've answered the question, what are the dimensions? Next question, example 5. The sum of 3 consecutive integers is 93. So I need to write an expression that represents 3 consecutive integers. So my first integer, I'll just make x. I don't know what it is, so I'll just give it an unknown x. My second integer, So if I want 3 consecutive integers, the integer after x will be 1 more than x, so x plus 1. My third integer, the integer after x plus 1, add 1 more to this, it becomes x plus 2. So now I want an expression that represents the sum of these integers. So I need to add these together. So I have x plus 1 plus x plus 2. And it tells me the sum of these 3 integers is 93. And then it asks me, what are the 3 integers? So I could then solve this equation because it has one unknown, solve it for x, and then plug it back into my expressions, my first, second, and third integers to figure out what the 3 integers are. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm adding polynomials here. I know in adding polynomials, I can just drop the brackets, so I'll do that, and then collect like terms. So I have a 1x plus a 1x plus another 1x here. So 1x plus 1x plus 1x is 3x. And on this side of the equation, I have a 1 plus 2, which is 3. So I've collected all the like terms on the left side of the equation. Now I need to isolate the term that has the variable. So isolate the 3x, move this 3 to the other side. On the left side, I'm adding 3. So that means when I bring it to the right side, I'm now going to be subtracting 3. So I'll rewrite this. 3x equals 93 minus 3. Simplify that. 93 minus 3 is 90. Now I have 3 times x equals 90. To bring this 3 to the other side, I must do the opposite of multiplying by 3. On the left, I'm doing 3 times x. So to bring it to the right, I must then do the opposite of multiplying by 3, and that's dividing by 3. So I have x equals 90 divided by 3. So x equals 30. So if my first integer is 30, my 3 consecutive integers are, I'll write them up here, are 30. And then 30 plus 1 is 31. 30 plus 2 is 32. So these are my 3 consecutive integers, 30, 31, and 32. Example number 6. 3 consecutive even integers have a sum of 102. Okay, so this one's very similar to the last one, but this time I need to make sure they are even integers. Okay, so my first integer, I can't just use x, because x could represent any number. It could represent an odd integer. It could represent 5. I want to make sure that my expression doesn't represent an odd integer. What I can do to make sure I have an even integer is I can multiply this x by 2. Multiplying anything by 2 guarantees that you get an even number. Okay, if you multiply any integer by 2, you get an even number for sure. So my first integer is 2x. So to get to my next even integer, so there's my first integer, my next one, the next even integer after that one, I need to skip the odd number. So the pattern of integers, it goes even number, then odd, then even, then odd. For example, 1 is an odd number, and then 2 is even, and 3 is odd, 4 is even, 5 is odd, 6 is even, 7 is odd, goes back and forth like that. So here's my first integer. Then that means, so this is even. That means the next integer is going to be odd. So I want to skip that. So I don't want to just add 1 to this 2x. I want to add 2. That way I get to the next even integer. And then the one after that, I'm going to add 2 to this one, and it's going to become 2x plus 4. And I know these 3 integers have a sum of 102. So what are the 3 integers? Well, we'll solve this equation. I have one unknown. I can solve that. I'm adding polynomials. I know in adding polynomials, I can just drop the brackets. So I'll start by doing that. And then I'm going to collect all my like terms and solve for the variable. So I have a 2x plus a 2x plus another 2x, that is 6x. And I have 2 plus 4, that gives me 6. Now I'm going to isolate the term that has the variable, so isolate the 6x by moving this plus 6 to the other side. On the other side it becomes minus 6. So I have 6x equals 102 minus 6. 102 minus 6 gives me 96. Now I have 6 times x equals 96. The opposite of multiplying x by 6 is dividing by 6. So to get this 6 to the other side, I must divide by 6. So I have x equals 96 over 6, and that gives me 16. So my first integer is 16. So my first integer, I know, sorry, my first integer isn't 16. My first integer is 2x. So my first is 2x, which is equal to 2 times 16, which is 32. So my first integer is actually 32. I know x equals 16, but I know my first integer is actually 2x. So my first integer is 2 times 16, which is 32. My second integer is 2x plus 2, which is equal to 2 times 16 plus 2, which is 32 plus 2, which is 34. And then the next even integer after that, I had 2x plus 4. So that would be 32 plus 4, which is 36. So my three consecutive integers are 32, 34, and 36. And those three integers have a sum of 102. And we could check that. You could add up 32 plus 34 plus 36, and you'd figure out that equals 102. So we've done this properly. We probably should have checked the last one too. After you've found your three integers, make sure that those three integers add up to the sum it gave you in the question. So it asks us to find three consecutive integers that have a sum of 93. 30 plus 31 plus 32 does equal 93, so that one's right. And this one, three consecutive even integers that add to 102. 32 plus 34 plus 36 does equal 102, so that one is correct as well. Okay, last example that we'll do. I have Catherine and Christine. It says Catherine is 2 years older than Christine. The sum of their ages is 16. Write an algebraic expression for each girl's age. That's what part A says. So I have Catherine and Christine. So I have Catherine and I have Christine. So Catherine's age, she's 2 years older than Christine. So I'm going to say that is, I'll make Christine's age x, and I know Catherine is 2 years older than Christine, so Catherine is x plus 2. Write an expression to represent the sum of their ages. I know the sum of their ages is 16, so I know x plus 2, x plus 2 is equal to 16. Let's actually go ahead and solve for each of these girls' ages here. Let's go ahead and do that, even though it doesn't ask us to. So if I want to now figure out what each of these girls' ages are, I actually have to solve this equation for x, and then use that information to figure out how old each girl is. So I'm adding a polynomial, so I can just drop the brackets. So x plus 2 equals 16. Collect my like terms. X plus x is 2x. Move this plus 2 to the other side, it becomes a minus 2. I get 2x equals 14. And then move the 2 to the other side by dividing it. I get x equals 14 over 2. X equals 7. So I know that x equals 7, so that means Christine is 7 years old. And I know that Catherine is 2 years older than Christine. So she is 7 plus 2, which equals 9. She's 9 years old. Okay, so I've now solved for the age of each of those girls. So from here, make sure you try the worksheet from jensenmath.ca. Download it, try it out. Let me know if you have any questions. And just make sure when you're doing these type of questions that you follow these guidelines right here. When solving word problems, make sure you define your unknowns. So make sure you determine what variables you're going to use and what they represent. Then write your equation to model the situation. Then solve the equation. And then make sure you've answered the question that the problem asked. So if it asked you, like for example, for this one here, find three consecutive even integers who have a sum of 102. Don't just go ahead and solve for x and then be done with it. Okay? What you want to what you want to do is actually make sure you answer the question. So use that answer of x equals 16 and plug it into each of your integers to figure out what your integers are. So I plugged it in to my expressions for my 3 integers and figured out what my 3 integers are. They were 32, 34, and 36. So make sure you finish off the question and answer what it asks you to do. All right, if you have any questions, make sure you let me know.